Hello, welcome to Phantom Homicide. The topic is John George Haigh, the acid bath murderer.
It really is one of those titles, isn't it? Instantly chilling. And today we're not just giving you a dry history lesson.
No, definitely not. We're doing a proper deep dive into what has to be one of the most calculated, meticulous, and frankly horrifying series of killings in Britain during the 20th century.
It's the mechanism of it all, the design. He truly thought he'd figured out how to commit the perfect crime, how to achieve complete impunity.
That's the core of it, isn't it? That cold, calculated arrogance. Our mission here is to really get under the skin of the man, John George Haigh, and understand the method behind the monster.
We're peeling back the layers of this macabre system he created, a system where the final step was just complete chemical oblivion for his victim.
Right. He wasn't just burying bodies or hiding them. He aimed for total obliteration using sulfuric acid bath.
Total obliteration. That was the goal, exactly. The whole point was to make his victims literally vanish. His thinking, deeply flawed as it was that if the police had no corpus delicti, no body, well, then they couldn't possibly convict him of murder.
It's hard to wrap your head around. You picture this man apparently quite smartly dressed, looked like a respectable businessman, and then you think of him working away in some dingy basement or workshop with these huge industrial oil drums, 40, 45 gallons, handling incredibly dangerous acid.
And wearing that gear, that sort of customized uniform they found, rubber gloves, a big rubber apron, even a wartime gas mask to protect himself from the toxic fumes. It's terrifying, this mix of almost clinical financial calculation and just raw industrial horror.
It really sets the scene. We're looking at crimes spanning the late 1940s. Primarily London, wasn't it? Gloucester Road initially.
And then later down in Crawley in West Sussex. But before he earned that infamous title, the acid bath murderer, he was, well, just John George Haigh. And part one, looking at his early life, it just shows this incredible, almost unbelievable contrast.
Between where he came from and the monster he became.
Exactly. The contrast is quite jarring. He was born 1909 in Stamford, Lincolnshire. But his childhood, particularly after they moved to Yorkshire, was defined by this intense, almost fanatical religious upbringing.
His parents, John, Robert, and Emily, they were Plymouth Brethren.
That's right, a Protestant sect known for its very strict, very austere doctrines. And when we say strict, we mean almost total isolation.
Yeah, I read he was an only child, raised in Outwood, Yorkshire, and his parents basically built this 10-foot-high fence around the garden. He later said he felt imprisoned there.
Imprisoned is the word he used. That fence wasn't just physical, it was psychological, too. They wanted to shut out the world, keep him completely separate. His only companions, apparently, were his pet rabbits. Can you imagine that level of isolation?
It's hard to fathom. And he later claimed that this intense, sort of bigoted upbringing caused him to have these recurring nightmares, religious nightmares.
Yes, dreams filled with blood, the color red. Or so he claimed later, possibly to build his insanity defense, but it's certainly part of his narrative.
Yet despite all that restriction, outwardly he seemed quite capable. He won a scholarship.
He did, to Queen Elizabeth Grammar School in Wakefield.
Yeah.
And he was talented musically. A choir boy at Wakefield Cathedral, even became the assistant organist, played the piano quite well, apparently liked classical music.
So he had intelligence, discipline, presentation skills. All things he'd later twist to his advantage.
Absolutely weaponized them. He could perform, he could excel when he wanted to, but somewhere underneath that surface, something clearly, well, it broke. By his early 20s, that facade just crumbled.
And he decided legitimate work wasn't for him.
Pretty much. He pivoted to crime, and it seems it was purely for the money. He actually said quite explicitly that he figured out there were easier ways of making a living than to work long hours in an office.
It's so cold, isn't it? No passion. No revenge driving him at this stage. Just pure, cold calculation. What's the quickest way to get rich?
And his first chosen path was fraud. Not violence, but fraud, which led to multiple stints in jail.
Right. Posing as a solicitor, forging documents for cars, trying to sell dodgy shares, all across London and the South Coast. The audacity is something else.
Stunning audacity. But ironically, sometimes his execution was a bit, well, clumsy.
Ah, yes. The spelling mistake, that famous blunder that got him caught. For a man aiming for the perfect crime, it's almost comical.
It really is. He was running a scam using fake solicitor's letterhead, right? But he misspelled the town Guildford, G-U-I-L-F-O-R-D, as Guildford, G-U-I-L-D-F-O-R-D, on his official stationery.
Such a basic error.
A simple typo. And that led to him being caught and getting a significant prison sentence. It wasn't clever detective work, it was carelessness, probably born from that arrogance, thinking he could just bluff his way through anything.
And the personal cost was huge, too, wasn't it? His life really started to unravel.
Completely. He'd married Beatrice Betty Hamer back in 1934, but while he was locked up for that fraud, the marriage just fell apart. She had their daughter.
And put the baby up for adoption immediately.
Straight away, cut him off completely. And then his deeply religious parents, they ostracized him too. So by the time he's out, he's alienated everyone, all down to his greed and his criminal choices.
So he's alone, he's done time, he's had plenty of time to think in prison, and the conclusion he reaches isn't crime doesn't pay.
Oh no, his conclusion was more like, the problem isn't the crime, it's leaving evidence, like witnesses, behind. It's this isolation, this period of intense focus in prison that directly leads him to develop this twisted idea of the perfect crime.
Which brings us neatly to part 2, the truly frightening invention of his method.
His time in Lincoln Prison around 1941, it wasn't about rehabilitation. It was like his personal research and development phase, his laboratory.
He regretted leaving victims alive who could testify against him in the fraud cases.
Exactly. So he started thinking, obsessing really, about a method of murder that would guarantee he couldn't be caught because there'd be no primary evidence left, no body.
And he found inspiration in French crime history.
That's right. He became fascinated by the case of Georges-Alexandre Sarret, a French killer from decades earlier who had also used sulfuric acid to dispose of bodies, trying to erase his tracks.
So Haigh didn't invent the idea, but he certainly aimed to perfect it.
He took Sarret's concept and ran with it, moving straight to practical experiments right there in prison. It's chilling how he repurposed his discipline, you know, the kind he used for piano practice, now for murder research.
How does he even do that inside prison?
Well, he managed to steal small amounts of concentrated sulfuric acid from the prison's tinsmith shop. Then he got inmates working on the prison farm to bring him dead field mice.
Field mice, as test subjects.
Yes. He used glass jars, probably pinched from the kitchens, put the mice in, added the acid, and just watched. He was trying to figure out the right amount, the right concentration, how long it would take.
And the results were encouraging, as the sources put it.
Disturbingly so for him. He worked out his formula, figured a small body could dissolve in about 30 minutes, or so he thought. He left prison absolutely convinced of this one majorly flawed principle.
The no body, no crime delusion.
Exactly. He genuinely believed that under British law, if the police couldn't produce a body, they simply couldn't get a murder conviction. He saw the acid not just as disposal, but as a kind of legal invisibility cloak.
A magic shield against the gallows.
Precisely. That was the fatal flaw in his grand design. So he gets released in 1943, works as an accountant for about a year, keeping up that respectable front. But by 1944, he's ready to put his prison theory into industrial practice.
Let's really dig into that methodology, the toolkit. Because the details the police found later, especially at the Crawley workshop, they just paint such a clinical, horrifying picture. What did he actually need?
It required a proper industrial setup, not something you could do in your bathroom sink. This was effectively a small, gruesome factory. At the workshop on Leopold Road in Crawley, police found these huge 40 or 45-gallon oil drums, big enough to hold a human body and the sheer volume of acid needed.
And the acid itself, how did he store and handle that?
In large glass containers called carboys, highly concentrated stuff. They also found a stirrup pump, the kind used during the war for fires. He probably used that to transfer the acid safely, or relatively safely, into the drums, and an enamel bucket.
And then there's that infamous item now in Scotland Yard's Black Museum, the stirring rod.
Ah, yes. The wooden stirring rod. It's such a mundane object, but used for such a horrific purpose. It's just a powerful symbol of his absolute detachment, his callousness. He used it to physically stir the dissolving remains to speed things up, checking on his work.
It underscores the sheer manual labor involved in these atrocities. It wasn't just pour and forget.
Not at all. And the protective gear you mentioned earlier, the uniform. That speaks volumes about how dangerous this process was, even for him.
He had to protect himself from his own method.
Absolutely. Concentrated sulfuric acid is incredibly corrosive. It reacts violently with organic matter, produces intense heat, and gives off choking, toxic fumes.
Yeah.
So his uniform was essential. Heavy rubber gloves, a big rubber raincoat, a thick rubber apron, and thigh-high rubber boots, a complete barrier.
And the gas mask.
The war surplus gas mask was crucial. Covered his whole face, stopped him from inhaling those lethal fumes. He knew exactly what he was dealing with.
The whole routine, the schedule he worked to. It's just shocking in its diligence.
Utterly meticulous, almost businesslike.
Yeah.
His preferred pattern was to commit the murder on a Friday. Well, he'd get the body into the drum, add the acid, maybe seal it up, then he could leave it undisturbed over the weekend. Let the acid work for a good 2 days. He'd come back on Monday, check the progress, give it a stir with that rod, maybe add more acid if needed. It was a planned, multi-day operation fitted around a normal working week.
So the disposal method, the acid bath, was constant. But the actual way he killed them changed, didn't it?
It did. The first 3 victims, the McSwan family, he killed with blunt force trauma. Used a heavy iron bar to the head. Simple, brutal.
But later.
The second group, the Hendersons and Olive Duran Deacon, he shot them. In the back of the head with a stolen pistol, a .38 Webley revolver from the war.
Why the change, do you think?
Probably refinement. Both methods aim for quick, quiet death, minimizing struggle. But shooting is likely less physically demanding, less messy initially than bludgeoning someone. Maybe he just found it more efficient.
Efficiency in murder. Chilling. Okay, let's move into part 3 and trace these victims. 6 confirmed victims, all linked by Haig's need for money. Starting in London with the McSwans.
William McSwan was victim number 1, back in 1944. Haigh knew him. William owned amusement parlors, had actually employed Haigh before.
So there was a prior connection.
Yes. Shortly after Haigh got out of prison, he lured William to a basement he'd rented at 79 Gloucester Road in London, killed him there with the iron bar, and then performed his first full-scale acid dissolution.
And disposing of the remains in London? That seemed to work initially.
It seemed to confirm his theory perfectly. The basement had a drain. He poured the leftover sludge, described as yellowish-white, down the manhole, straight into the London sewer system, ending up in the River Thames. Gone, seemingly without a trace.
And the fraud followed immediately.
Instantly. He moved into William's house, forged property deeds, gaining control of 6 London properties William owned. He spun tales to relatives, saying William had gone to America or maybe Scotland or was dodging military service. Anything to explain his disappearance.
And getting away with that first one, the money, the lack of police attention. It must have just fueled his confidence, his delusion.
Absolutely. It proved his system worked in his mind. The success of that cover-up emboldened him. But then the war ended, and William's parents, Donald and Amy McSwan, they started asking more questions. Where was William really?
And that understandable curiosity signed their death warrants.
Tragically, yes. In July 1945, Haigh lured both Donald and Amy to the same Gloucester Road basement. The pretext was that William was coming back for a surprise visit.
He used their hope against them.
Precisely. He killed both of them, again with blows to the head, dissolved them in acid just like their son. Now he had full control. He started stealing William's pension checks, systematically forged more documents, and sold off all 6 properties.
How much did he make from the McSwans?
Around £8,000 back then, which is a considerable sum, maybe close to £500,000 in today's money. Enough for him to live very well, maintain that facade of the successful businessman, staying at the rather upmarket Onslow Court Hotel in Kensington.
But he wasn't investing it, was he? He was burning through it.
Oh, completely. Extravagant lifestyle, nice clothes, car, and a significant gambling habit, apparently. So by 1947, just 2 years later, that McSwan fortune was gone. He needed more money.
Which leads to phase 2, the Hendersons.
Another financial crisis, another target. This time, Dr. Archibald Henderson and his wife, Rose. She was apparently a former beauty queen. Haigh got in touch, pretending he was interested in buying a house they were selling.
He charmed his way in again.
Effortlessly. Rose even invited him to play the piano at their housewarming party. He seemed so personable. It was during that visit, chillingly, that Haigh stole Dr. Henderson's .38 Webley revolver, the gun he'd used for his next 3 murders.
And by this point, he'd set up a new base of operations outside London, right? In Crawley.
Yes, crucially. He rented a small workshop at 2 Leopold Road in Crawley, West Sussex, posing as an inventor or engineer of some kind. He moved his grisly equipment, the drums, the acid down there from London. This was his second and final murder workshop.
So February 1948, he targets the Hendersons.
On February 12th, he lured Dr. Henderson to the Crawley workshop first. The lure was a supposed business meeting discussing an invention, maybe manufacturing powder compacts, something plausible.
Got him alone, distracted.
Shot him in the back of the head with the stolen revolver. Then, the really cool part, he contacted Rose Henderson, told her Archibald had suddenly taken ill at the workshop, that she needed to come quickly.
She walks right into the trap.
Exactly. When she arrived, he shot her too. Both bodies went into the acid drums in the Crawley workshop.
The callousness afterwards is just breathtaking.
It really is. He didn't just take their money. He took over their lives, almost. He kept their dog, an Irish setter, for a while, drove their car around London, wrote fake letters to relatives saying the Hendersons had emigrated to South Africa, systematically forged documents to sell their house, their shop, several flats they owned.
Another big payday.
Another 8,000 pounds or so. He was getting quite practiced at the fraud side of things by now. Murder was just the first step in liquidating their assets for his own gain.
But again, the money wouldn't last. His spending habits didn't change.
Predictably not. By early 1949, barely a year later, he was desperate for cash again. And this time, he targeted someone very close to home. Literally.
Olive Durand Deacon, a fellow resident at the Onslow Court Hotel.
Yes, a wealthy 69-year-old widow living in the same hotel. She apparently had significant assets, maybe 36,000 pounds in stocks and shares, a huge amount then. Haigh found out she had this idea for making artificial fingernails.
And he saw his opportunity. Same old trick.
Exactly the same playbook. He pretended to be interested in helping her develop the idea, used the same powder compact manufacturing story as a pretext to lure her down to his workshop in Crawley. This was on February 18th, 1949.
His final victim.
Yeah.
And the act itself. Almost routine by now.
Terrifyingly so. It speaks to that phrase, the banality of evil. He shot her in the back of the neck, same revolver, stripped her of her valuables, jewelry, and significantly her distinctive Persian lamb coat.
And then into the acid.
Into a brand new drum, actually. This one was specially coated inside, which suggests he was still trying to refine his process, maybe make the drums last longer against the acid. Once he'd set the dissolution going, what did he do?
He went to a local cafe?
And calmly ordered and ate poached eggs on toast. The complete lack of any emotional response right after murdering and dissolving someone is just staggering.
That detail, the poached eggs, it's just so mundane and chilling. It perfectly illustrates that absolute callous indifference the psychiatrist later described. But this time, there was a difference.
A crucial difference. Unlike the McSwans or the Hendersons, who perhaps didn't have people checking on them quite so immediately.
Olive Durand Deacon had close friends, vigilant friends.
Exactly. Her friend Constance Lane noticed she was missing very quickly. Within 48 hours, she went to the Chelsea police station and reported it.
That quick action was key.
Absolutely vital, because the police started interviewing residents at the Onslow Court Hotel almost immediately, and suspicion quickly fell on Haigh. Why? He was overly friendly, perhaps a bit too solicitous, asking questions about Mrs. Durand Deacon. And crucially, the police knew he had a prior criminal record for fraud. That was the fatal flaw in his supposedly perfect plan.
Which brings us to part 4, the investigation. The moment the science really starts to dismantle Haigh's delusion.
Detective Sergeant Patrick Heslin from Chelsea CID got involved very quickly. They focused on Haigh's movements, especially down in Crawley, and soon got a warrant to search that workshop at 2 Leopold Road.
And what did they find inside?
It was immediately incriminating. Just walking in, they found the whole setup. The rubber apron, the gloves, the boots, the gas mask, his murder uniform. They found glass jars with traces of acid.
But more than the equipment, it was the paperwork, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely damning. In Haig's attaché case, they found a dry cleaner's receipt. For what? For Olive Durand Deacon's Persian lamb coat.
Oh, wow. A direct link.
A direct physical link between him and the missing woman, establishing motive theft. But it got much worse for Haigh. As they searched the workshop thoroughly, they uncovered hundreds of documents.
Relating to all the victims.
All 3 sets. Forged deeds, stolen pension check stubs, fake letters, documents relating to the property sales for the McSwans, the Hendersons, and Mrs. Durand Deacon. His entire criminal enterprise laid bare on paper. The fraud game was well and truly over.
But Haigh, incredibly, still seemed to believe he was safe. Because there was no body.
He clung to that belief. He even confessed quite readily to killing Mrs. Durand Deacon, but insisted they couldn't prove it because, in his words, she no longer existed. He'd destroyed her with acid. He practically challenged them to find her.
Enter Professor Keith Simpson, the pathologist.
Yes, the eminent forensic pathologist. His job was basically to prove Haigh wrong, to show that chemical dissolution wasn't total annihilation. And the key difference here, compared to the London murders, was the location.
The workshop in Crawley didn't have a convenient drain leading to the Thames.
Exactly, no floor drain. So Haigh had been forced to dispose of the final residue the sledge left after the acid had done most of its work somewhere else. He'd simply dumped it onto a pile of builder's rubble just outside the workshop.
So that rubbish heap became the crucial crime scene.
That's where Simpson and his team focused their efforts. Painstaking work, sifting through all that debris, looking for anything the acid hadn't destroyed.
What could possibly survive that?
Well, Hay's chemistry wasn't perfect. Sulfuric acid is good at dissolving soft tissues, but other things resist it much better. Simpson's team recovered several key pieces of evidence. First, about 28 pounds of human body fat.
28 pounds. How does fat survive?
It undergoes a process called saponification. Basically, the acid turns the fat into a kind of waxy, soapy substance adipocere, which is much more resistant to further dissolution. Finding that much indicated a large amount of human fat had been processed there.
Okay, what else?
They found 3 human gallstones. Gallstones are hard, mineralized deposits, and they survive the acid remarkably well. They also found 18 fragments of human bone.
Bone. I thought acid dissolved bone.
It erodes it significantly, especially the outer layers. But bone is made of calcium phosphate, which is quite resistant. Small eroded fragments can definitely survive, especially if the acid concentration drops or the temperature isn't high enough. Simpson could identify these as human. They even found part of a human foot, just the bones heavily eroded.
Gallstones, bone fragments, melted fat. It all points to a human body. But the clincher, the piece that tied it directly to Olive Durand Deacon,
It was man-made. A piece of her denture, false teeth. The acid couldn't completely destroy the acrylic or porcelain. Simpson's team found a fragment.
and they could match it.
Positively. They took it to Mrs. Durand Deacon's dentist, and he confirmed it matched her records. That was it, the physical proof. Murder had occurred. Hayes' no body, no crime theory was completely shattered. This case basically set the legal precedent that you don't need a whole body if forensic science can prove death occurred and identify the victim from remains.
With the science stacked against him, Haigh had to change tactics. Which leads us to part 5. The trial. It became less about guilt or innocence, more about sanity, right? A kind of psychological theater.
Absolutely. His only real hope was to avoid the gallows by being declared insane. So his confession became even more elaborate. He stuck to the 6 murders we know about McSwan's, Henderson's, Durand Deacon, but then he added 3 more.
3 others. Were they real?
Almost certainly not. A young man named Max, a girl from Eastbourne, a woman from Hammersmith. No evidence ever surfaced for these claims. It seems likely he invented them to bolster his image as someone uncontrollably driven to kill, perhaps, part of the insanity narrative.
And the most sensational part of that narrative was the vampire claim.
The acid bath vampire headline grabber. He claimed he was compelled to drink his victims' blood before dissolving them, described using a penknife to cut the throat, collecting blood in a glass.
It sounds completely outlandish. Did anyone believe it?
It was widely reported, sensationalized. But what's fascinating is, apart from the blood drinking and the extra 3 victims, the rest of his very long, detailed confession, the timings, the locations, the methods, the fraud, it all checked out. It was remarkably accurate. He even maintained the blood drinking story right up until his execution.
Was it purely for the insanity defense, do you think? Or did he maybe start to believe his own macabre additions?
It's hard to say for sure, but the timing strongly suggests it was strategic. The clearest evidence of his calculation, though, was a question he asked the arresting officer, Detective Inspector Webb.
What did he ask?
While in custody, quite calmly, he asked, "Tell me frankly, what are the chances of anybody being released from Broadmoor?"
Broadmoor, the high-security psychiatric hospital.
Exactly. That question just laid bare his strategy. He wasn't asking out of curiosity, he was weighing his options. He saw Broadmoor not as a lifetime sentence, but as a potential way out eventually, compared to the finality of hanging. It showed clear calculation, not uncontrollable madness.
So the trial begins at Lewis Assizes. The prosecution's case seems pretty clear.
Led by the Attorney General himself, Sir Hartley Shawcross, their argument was straightforward. This wasn't insanity. This was cold, calculated murder for financial gain. Look at the planning, the meticulous disposal, the systematic fraud. Malice aforethought, plain and simple.
And the defense.
Led by Sir David Maxwell Fyfe, who later became Home Secretary. They pushed the insanity plea hard. They brought up the childhood nightmares, the supposed return of blood dreams after a car crash in 1944, and of course, the alleged blood drinking compulsion.
Did they have medical experts supporting this?
They did. Dr. Henry Yellowlees testified, describing Hayes' demeanor in custody as showing an absolute callous, cheerful, bland, and almost friendly indifference to his situation, which Yellowlees considered unique in his experience.
That description perfectly captures the psychopathy, doesn't it? That profound lack of feeling. But indifference isn't the same as legal insanity.
Precisely. And the prosecution could easily counter by pointing to Hayes' obvious planning, his ability to manage complex financial fraud, his logical steps to cover his tracks, even changing his murder weapon. This wasn't the behavior of someone completely out of touch with reality.
How long did the jury take?
Minutes. They saw through the insanity plea almost immediately, found him guilty. Mr. Justice Humphreys sentenced him to death.
And the execution followed quickly.
Very quickly. He was hanged by Albert Pierpoint, the famous executioner, at Wandsworth Prison on August 10th, 1949, just under 6 months after he murdered Olive Duran Deacon.
There was also that interesting legal footnote involving the press during the trial, wasn't there?
Oh yes, a significant case in media law. While the trial was still ongoing, before the verdict, the editor of the Daily Mirror newspaper, a chap named Sylvester Bullum, ran a story calling Haigh a murderer.
You can't do that before conviction.
Absolutely not. It's contempt of court because it could prejudice the jury. Bullum was found guilty of contempt and actually sentenced to 3 months in prison. The newspaper was fined £10,000, a huge sum then. It was a very stark lesson for the British press about respecting the trial process.
Despite the horror, Haigh became instantly infamous, a dark celebrity.
Overnight, the acid bath murderer label was just too morbidly fascinating. His notoriety was so immediate that Madame Tussauds Waxworks Museum acquired his actual suit almost straight after the execution for their Chamber of Horrors exhibit. He became a permanent fixture of dark popular culture.
Okay, let's step back for our final analysis in part 6. Trying to understand the psychopathy here. That Jekyll and Hyde description often comes up, the charming exterior hiding the monster.
It fits perfectly, doesn't it? Good-looking man, apparently very pleasant manners, dressed impeccably, people liked him. His neighbors, even a teenage girlfriend he had, Barbara, seemed to find him charming. He cultivated this image of a slightly opportunistic but essentially harmless inventor or businessman.
But underneath?
Pure ruthlessness. And we actually have a remarkable window into his mindset beyond the trial theatrics and newspaper reports, thanks to research done at Cambridge.
Ah, the Cambridge letters. This is fascinating.
It really is. The Institute of Criminology at Cambridge holds an archive of over 100 of Haigh's letters and writings, stuff from his childhood, schoolwork, but most importantly, extensive correspondence he wrote from prison, mainly to his parents.
So researchers can look past the public persona and the confession and see the private man.
Exactly. It's an invaluable resource for understanding his psychology. Professor Friedrich Losel, who was director of the Institute, analyzed these writings in depth.
And what did he find? What indicators of psychopathy emerged?
Several classic signs. Firstly, and perhaps most strikingly, was the profound lack of remorse or even acknowledgement of his situation. In his letters home, he almost never discussed the horrific crimes he'd committed or the fact he was facing execution. He just ignored it, talked about mundane things.
Complete denial or just total lack of empathy? Did he seem aware of his notoriety?
Oh, intensely aware, and seemingly proud of it. Losel noted clear delusions of grandeur. Haigh clearly took great pride in reading about himself in the papers, the attention he was getting. He seemed obsessed with the legend he was creating, not the human cost.
It sounds like that total emotional disconnect again. He understood the facts, but not the feelings.
That's exactly how Losel described it. He said Haigh showed very little evidence of understanding the emotional impact of his actions on his victims, on their families, even on his own parents. Losel used a great analogy. It was as if he hears the tone but does not understand the music.
He just couldn't grasp the human meaning behind it all. Does Losel suggest a cause? Was it just the upbringing or something deeper?
While acknowledging the harsh, isolating upbringing must have played a role, Losel suggested this profound emotional deficit might point to something more innate, a mental predisposition, perhaps even a neurological issue that fundamentally prevented him from developing genuine empathy or moral understanding.
So, not legally insane. He knew what he was doing was wrong in society's eyes and acted for profit, but deeply, fundamentally flawed emotionally and morally.
That seems to be the consensus. And even in his very final letters, the archive reveals one small but quite profound detail, a change in how he signed off.
What was that?
Throughout his time in prison, writing home, he'd always signed his letters to his parents intimately as Sonny, maintaining that persona of the child, perhaps.
But in the very last note.
In the very last letter, written just before his execution, when he was finally accepting his fate, he changed his signature. He signed it formally. John George.
Wow. Letting go of the Sonny persona.
It feels like it, doesn't it? A subtle but powerful shift, as if the mask finally dropped completely, leaving just the condemned man, the notorious killer, John George Haigh, facing the end.
That signature change really is a poignant endnote to this terrifying story.
Mm.
Ultimately, John George Haigh, the acid bath murderer, his legacy is one of, well, failure disguised as genius, his grand delusion.
He sought the perfect, untraceable crime through chemical destruction, but his own case proved the exact opposite. It established that forensic science could triumph, that even tiny dissolved traces, bits of bone, gallstones, melted fat, a piece of denture could speak volumes and secure a conviction.
His absolute confidence in his acid bath method was his undoing. It made him careless, especially at Crawley, leaving that residue pile.
Which allowed Professor Simpson and the police to meticulously piece together the truth. Hay thought he could make people vanish, but in the end, while he vanished on the gallows, the evidence of his terrible crimes remained. His perfect crime was anything but.
Okay, so we hope you liked our today's discussion. For more such discussions, subscribe to our channel, Phantom Homicide.